He becomes free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Text 32. Ye tutarabhyasu yanto nanushishtanti me matam sarvagyana vimuktam iti nashtam chetasaha. But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings and do not practice them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and doomed to ignorance and bondage. Text 33. Sadrisham chete svasa prakrite jnanavanpi prakritim yanti puntani nigraham karishyati. Translation. And even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows his nature. What can repression accomplish? Text 34. Indriyas indriyas yarte raga dvisho vivastito tayorna vasham agache avyasya paribhante. Translation. Attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings, but one should not fall under the control of senses and sense objects because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Text 35. Shreyan Swadharma Vina Translation. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duty, even though they may be faulty, than another's duty. Destruction in the course of performing one's duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another path is dangerous. Text 36. Arjuna Uvacha Atakena Prayuktam Papam Charati Purushaha Anicchanapi Vaishneya Valadiva Nipuchata. Translation. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vishnu, by what is one compelled to wax, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Text 38. 37. Oh, sorry, 37. Text 37. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kama Esha Kruda Esha Rajo Guna Smudbhava Vidyanam Vaira. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material modes of passion and later transcends into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Text 38. Tumina vriyate vanir yata darshu malinicha yato vinyatas Translation. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mule is covered by dust, or as is covered by the womb, similarly, the living entity is covered by different degrees of this lust. Text 39. Avritam jnanam etena jnanino nityavairina Translation. Thus a man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Text 40. Indriyani mano buddhi asyadhisthana muchyate etar vimohayatisha. Translation. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust, which veils the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Last text, text 41. Tasmat tvam indriyan yadu niyamya bharatashava papam vajindriya jnana vijnana asha. Translation. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of lust, sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Okay, we can go back to text 31. Translation again on text 31. One who executes his duties according to my injunctions and who follows this teaching faithfully without envy becomes free from the bondage of fruit of actions. Purport. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom, and therefore is truly eternally true without exception. As the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction without envying the Lord. There are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita, but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruit of action. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. So, Prabhupada is saying here that we need to follow the injunctions of Krishna. We need to follow his orders. And how do we follow his orders? Well, we go by what the spiritual master tells us. And we also go by what the other gurus who are called Shiksha gurus, what they tell us as well. Because they're all looking out for our best, for our benefit. And yeah, so yeah, we can go to the next text. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not practice them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and doomed to ignorance and bondage. Purport. The flaw of not being Krishna conscious is clearly stated herein, as there is punishment for disobedience to the order of the Supreme Executive Head, so there is certainly punishment for the disobedience of the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A disobedient person, however great he may be, is ignorant of his own self, of the Supreme Brahman and Paramatma, and the Personality of Godhead, due to a vacant heart. Therefore, there is no hope of perfection of life for him. So this is nice. There was I was listening to Prabhupada one time, and he was saying that he says this a lot actually. Actually, a lot of the points that he says he repeats over and over again, so it can stay in our. When we are being in the material, when you're in a prison, whether you're a third-class prisoner, second-class prisoner, or first-class prisoner, you don't want to stay a prisoner. You want to get out of the prison cell, the prison house. And so this is kind of what Prabhupada is saying, is that in order to whether somebody is however great somebody may be, if he is still in this material world, then he's considered to be no more than a fool, because, well, not a fool, but he just hasn't figured out the way to become liberated, and that is a great misfortune. But somebody who, like it was said in the last verse, in the last purport, it said that even if an ordinary man takes up this Krishna consciousness and he executes it with full faith and with sincerity and seriousness and determination, he can understand the transcendental knowledge, which can only be given by Krishna, by his mercy. That's the only way we get this transcendental knowledge. It goes, how does it go? It goes detachment, then knowledge, and then transcendental knowledge. So that's the process for us getting knowledge. But it's only by Krishna's mercy. And we can't force Krishna's hand. We can't make it seem like we can't make it seem like we're doing more than what we think we're doing. We can't make Krishna do what we want, basically. And that's basically what this verse is saying. Actually, this verse is saying that one has one has to be obedient to Krishna. That's what it's saying. So it's like any other thing in life. If you disregard good authority, then you're bound to have some negative reaction. Like, let's say, I remember being in school, and I always remember, like, or my mother, just regular authorities that we learn from all throughout our lives. If we disregard their teachings and we do what they say not to do, then we have to suffer some reaction. It's like that in everyday life. But it's even more magnifying glasses. Even the minute details are even more important in spiritual life, because we're trying to perfect ourselves. So if we don't abide by these rules and regulations, then we can't expect to become perfect in our lives. So yeah, that's some points. We can go on to the next text. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows his nature. What can repression accomplish? Purport. Unless one is situated on the transcendental platform of Krishna consciousness, he cannot get free from the influence of the modes of material nature, as it is confirmed by the Lord in the 7th chapter, 7:14. Therefore, even for the most highly educated person on the mundane plane, it is impossible to get out of the entanglement of Maya simply by theoretical knowledge, or by separating the soul from the body. There are many so-called spiritualists who outwardly pose to be advanced in the science, but inwardly or privately are completely under the particular modes of nature, which they are unable to surpass. Academically, one may be very learned, but because of this long association with material nature, he is in bondage. Krishna consciousness helps one to get out of the material entanglement, even though one may be engaged in his prescribed duties. Therefore, without being fully in Krishna consciousness, no one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so-called yogi or transcendentalist artificially. It is better to be situated in one's position and try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. Thus one may be freed from the clutches of Maya. Yeah. So it's saying, so we need the higher taste. And this is why the higher taste is so important, because it allows us to see what's on the other side of spiritual life. When we actually experience this higher taste, we automatically give up anything unfavorable to something that could get in the way of our getting the higher taste. So if we're able to stay steady and continue to get the higher taste over a long period of time, we can stay in Krishna consciousness. And that's really what we all want. We all want to stay in Krishna consciousness, whether we're doing our duties, or whether we're doing something else, as long as we stay in Krishna consciousness, as long as we're chanting our 16 rounds attentively, as long as we're following the 4 regulative principles, as long as we're doing these things, then we can actually see a difference, and then we can actually stay in Krishna consciousness a lot longer than we thought we could. So the higher taste is very important. The higher taste is it's actually the most essential thing. We get our higher taste from different things. We can get it from chanting, we can get it from reading, we can get it from taking prasadam, we can get it from devotee association, but ultimately that higher taste is what we want. So the next text. Attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings. The one who should not fall under the control of senses and sense objects, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Purport. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratifications. But those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement, but one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scripture does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. For example, according to scriptural injunction, one is forbidden to engage in sexual relationships with any woman other than one's own wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother, but in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations, and yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray. As much as there is always the chance of an accident, even on the royal roads, although there as much. Sorry, let me read that again. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always a chance of an accident, even on the royal roads. Although they may be carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger, even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time, owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must be avoided by all means. But action in the loving service of Krishna detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness. So this means us when Prabhupada is saying that those in Krishna consciousness, yes, we're in Krishna consciousness, but we're not fully there. We're not completely absorbed in Krishna every second of every day. And therefore we have to follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures because we are conditioned. So in order to get to this pure level of consciousness, we have to follow these rules and regulations. That's part of the austerity of being in Krishna consciousness, is following these injunctions. But this is great for us because when we follow these injunctions, we can see over time that it gets easier to follow them, and then we experience the nectar that we always hanker after. And that's the way to actually get the higher taste, is to follow these rules, follow these regulations with a enthusiastic spirit. So yeah, and then Prabhupada also says that, where is it? So we have to be unattached. We can't just, so let's say Prabhupada uses sex, but I'm going to use the example of taking prasad. So let's say we find that we have prasad in front of us, and we know that we can only have 2 or 3 meals a day. So when we say to ourselves, when we have prasad in front of us, we say to ourselves, "Oh, I'm going to enjoy so much," and that's okay. That's definitely okay for when you begin. You should take to your full satisfaction, like we say all the time. But after a while, you start to begin to notice that these things, the prasad taking, you start to fine tune it a little more and more. Like, oh, if I eat too much prasad at night, then or after a certain period of time, after a certain time in the day, I notice that it's hard for me to wake up and stay awake during the japa period. It's been like that for me. I have personal experience of this, is that I can't really, even though I don't do it, but I can't really eat after a certain time. Otherwise, it's almost impossible for me to stay awake during japa. But yeah, these things, you have to be detached from them, and the way to be in order to be detached, we have to become steady in this Krishna consciousness. So yeah, were there any comments or questions so far on any of the verses? Yes, Mogadari?
Can I make any comment, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Okay. So I like the point that you're saying that when we stay steady in these things, then that's when we can get the higher taste. And as you mentioned too, the higher taste means automatically we become detached from the material stuff. So Prabhupada was saying that there's a lot of different rules and regulations in the scriptures, and not all of them are directly connected with Krishna consciousness. But what's so amazing is that Prabhupada and the Acharyas, they've given us the essence of the instructions. We have Shikshastaka, we have Upadeshamrita, we have Nectar of Devotion, or like that, so many awesome texts, where all the rules that are most important are given for us. And Prabhupada in his books highlights some of those major points too. And I've just been thinking about this point that I have desires other than Krishna's service. And there'll be no way for me to get rid of those unless I engage in Krishna's service. And what's so amazing is that Krishna's service satisfies all my desires anyway. So like, I want to eat nicely. So then I eat Krishna Prasadam because, well, I want to eat nicely, but when I serve Krishna with the process of eating, then I always eat nicely. So instead of desiring to eat nicely, which, you know, there may be some rules and regulations about what the human society should eat in the scriptures, but we automatically achieve all that by just serving Krishna through that process. Like, you know, and with like health or getting exercise, I've been thinking about this point a lot, that one wants to be healthy, one has a desire to be healthy and fit. And there may be, we don't want that, we don't want anything to compete with the real desire, which our real desire, or the desire of the soul, is to serve Krishna. So we do all the processes of devotional service, and we dovetail our desires with that. So if we want to be fit, then we can pay obeisances to the devotees. If we want to be fit, then we can use all of our energy in the kirtan during the artis. And what will happen is that we'll lose the desire for anything other than actually pleasing Krishna by our activities and our words and our thoughts. So that's just some reflections, and I'm excited to keep dovetailing my desires in Krishna's service, and eventually they'll be completely purified.
Sorry. Yes, Maharaj?
You want to become fit. But if you try to become fit in these bodies, you're destined to get old and okay, I don't need to put it on me. You put it on someone else. You try to become fit in these bodies, you're destined to become old and diseased. But if you get a spiritual body, that's eternal, eternally fit, no more disease. So getting a higher taste means, yeah, I'm trying to be fit too. I want to be fit to live eternally in the spiritual world. So I don't have to fall down and take these material bodies when I'm trying to, that are subject to become disease and problems. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. So let's go to the next text, text 35. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duty, even though they may be faulty, than another's duty. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties. for to follow another's path is dangerous. Purport. One should therefore discharge his prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness, rather than those prescribed for others. Prescribed duties complement one's psychological condition. Under the spell of the modes of material nature, spiritual duties are as ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Krishna, but both materially or spiritually, one should stick to his prescribed duties even up to death, rather than imitate another's prescribed duties. Duties on the spiritual platform and duties on the material platform may be different, but the principle of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for particular situations and should not imitate others. For example, a Brahmana who is in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for Kshatriya,
How to
as
what? How to what? Loud, what was your last? The last part you read. Read it here.
oh, yes. Let me read the whole sentence. For example, a Brahmana who is in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya, it is better to be vanquished following the rules of violence than to imitate a Brahmana who follows the principles of non-violence. Everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahmana, or a Brahmana may act as a Kshatriya. In the transcendental stage, the distinctions of the material world do not apply. For example, Vishwamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana, whereas Parashuram was a Brahmana, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. Being transcendentally situated, they could do so, but as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have a full sense of Krishna consciousness. So, this verse is telling us that, let's see what it says. Yeah, so basically it's saying you can't be two things at once. You can't try, if you're a Kshatriya, you can't be a Kshatriya and want to be a Brahmana at the same time. You should only stick to one thing. And that one thing is our prescribed duties, or what's also known as the Varnashram Dharma system. And the Varnashram Dharma system is so complete because it gives us 4 classes and 4 social orders in which we can plug ourselves into and become perfect by a gradual process. In the ages before, there was the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. And then you have the Brahmanas, you have the Brahmacharis, the Grihastas, the Vanaprasthas, and then the Sannyasis. And this system was so perfect because it was given by the Lord, but it was also, it was so perfect that anyone who engaged in it, they gradually became more and more purified. and gradually they came to the stage of Krishna consciousness. So that was the Varnashram Dharma system. Prabhupada was really adamant about getting this Varnashram Dharma system out into the world. Because if we're able to get people to actually do these things, to actually follow their own inclinations, we can see a whole different, we see just a whole different, what's it called? A big change in the world. And this doesn't mean, well, I was born a Brahmana, so of course I'm a Brahmana, and I'll stay a Brahmana for the rest of my life. But no, that's not how it works. The Brahmana, the Varnashram Dharma system is such that one who is qualified to become a Brahmana or a Kshatriya, they become a Brahmana or a Kshatriya through their qualities, not by birth. So you can't just say that you're a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or a Shudra, because that's not chosen by you. It's seen by the spiritual master when you're in the Gurukul, which is a school for brahmacharis, for young men, and they live with the guru and they serve him as a menial servant. But people learn. The guru, he finds out the tendencies of the students, and by that system, they're able to figure out what the student's tendency is, so that he can become a Vaishya or a Shudra or Shat. Mostly Shudras didn't attend, but Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas, they all attended the Gurukul. And so yeah, forget where I was going with this, but yeah, I think I was saying that.
Yeah, you covered it. You covered it fine.
Okay. So we can go to the next text. Text 36. O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one compelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Purport. A living entity, as part and parcel of the Supreme, is originally spiritual, pure, and free from all contaminations. Therefore, by nature, he is not subjected to the sins of the material world. But when he is in contact with the material nature, he acts in many sinful ways without hesitation. And sometimes even against his will. As such, Arjuna's question to Krishna is very sanguine as to the very nature of the living entities. Although the living entity sometimes does not want to act in sin, he is still forced to act. Sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the supersoul within, but are due to another cause, as the Lord explains in the next verse. So we can see that this everyone is being moved by some sort of well, it says in the next text that lust is what moves the living entity to act in such a sinful way. And lust is the ultimate enemy of the living entity, because it makes him engage in very sinful acts or wrath. Lust is transformed into wrath. And so, yeah, it's not good. So we can go to text 38.
Lust is, as Krishna explained, it means one is being pushed by the mode of passion. And how does one get pushed by the mode of passion? Because he's not engaging his natural tendency to do something or love someone. He's not following Krishna's advice on how to use it in Krishna's service. So therefore, he uses it in the wrong way, and he becomes influenced by the lower modes. And then he finds himself being forced to act sinfully. Whereas if that same passion, that energy, that desire, that initiative can be dovetailed with Krishna's instructions, Krishna's service, then it remains pure, and it gets even more pure, like Arjuna. Arjuna wasn't sure how he should use his passion, his energy. Krishna said, yes, use it for me. This is a perfect opportunity for you to use your passion, your energy, your training, your desires. You're fit for the service. So do it with all enthusiasm, do it to please me, and you'll be perfect. And Arjuna did it.
Thank you. Were there any comments or questions on any of these verses? Yes, Dr. Juan.
So I guess my first question was, how does one know what his prescribed duties are? So say like, because you were saying that a guru's who knows what your prescribed duties are based on your tendencies. But what if I don't have a guru? So say, what if I've never came to this temple? How would I know which my prescribed duty is? Because I like throughout my life, I guess my prescribed duties have been changing. Like I've been a student, I've been a worker, and now I'm in a Bhakta program. So how do I know which one is the one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we can learn what our prescribed duty is by well,
How about saying in the purport that as long as one is under the modes of material nature, then his prescribed duties are described in the scriptures according to the Varnashram system, where he fits in those categories. In other words, he's inclined towards a particular type of activity, then there are responsibilities. And just like anything, if you want to open a business, you like to make some food and sell it. Okay, you can do that. But if you do it according to the laws of the state and the city, then it will be a lot easier for you. If you don't follow the laws, don't follow the instructions of the city, you'll have difficulties. But when one is fortunate enough to come in contact with the bona fide spiritual master in disciplic succession, who's teaching the transcendental scriptures, transcendental activities of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, and he tells us, he gives us our duty, what that duty is, and we follow that. And then we make spiritual progress very quickly. Like, for example, Prabhupada. Someone comes to Prabhupada's movement and says, what's it all about? And he gets an idea. And then he hears philosophically that we're not this body, and we should make sure everything we do is in accord with Krishna's instructions. It's meant to please Krishna. So he gives us some guidelines how to do that. chant Hare Krishna, offer your food to Krishna, hear about Krishna, so many things. And then gradually, step by step, it's all described by Sri Rupa Goswami. Starts off with some faith, association with devotees, initiation, etc.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.